Hi there folks, my name's Novapoint24 and welcome to another little review of an FSX and P3D product. So today we're going to be having a look at, we're going to be having a look at two products today. You're getting a bit of a 2-for-1 deal today. So we're going to be having a look at Orbix's recently released rendition of the Gold Coast Airport, International Airport. And we're also going to be having a look at their semi-recently released version of their Cityscape of the Gold Coast, the Gold Coast area. So these two products kind of go hand in hand. So I did sort of want to go, if I was going to review them, I thought it would be best to actually review them together. So before we get too far into it though, I do want to say thank you very much to the wonderful team over at Orbx for providing me with the review copies of both of these add-ons today to bring to you to have a look at. And of course, today we are having a look at this in the world of Prepared V4. We're going to have a look at this scenery is fully compatible with the ESP suite, including FSX, F16 edition, and Prepared's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Alright, so as I said, we're going to be going through, this is going to be a two-part review, so we're going to be having a look at, not only going to be having a look at the airport, we're going to be having a look at then the surrounding area, the Gold Coast, after that. So we're going to do our usual thing, we're going to have a look around the airport, explore some of its interesting features, and then we're going to go up for a, I'm going to show off my absolutely awful helicopter skills, and we're going to go for a bit of a tourist flight as we check out the surrounding area as well. So, so let's get ourselves underway. So as I said, so Gold Coast International Airport is an airport. It's actually got quite an interesting sort of fairly simple but very interesting history. So it actually goes back to the 1920s. When it was originally called Billinga Airstrip. Sort of that's the suburb and the area that the airport's on. It was originally called Billinga Airstrip, as I said. It is served as an intermediate, as an emergency alternative for airmail flights for transiting between Sydney and Brisbane. So if for whatever reason they couldn't make it there was bad weather in Brisbane, or needed an emergency diversion for whatever reason, this was the strip that they would actually go to. That then turned into, sort of in the post-war years, as sort of aircraft became available and air travel became more commonplace, it actually turned into the ability for, there was a passenger flights being operated here, it became known as Coolangatta Airport, and then from there it would become, later when the ownership changed several times in the late 90s, early 2000s, it would then become known as Gold Coast Airport, which it has its name today. So yeah, it's got an interesting history about that, and it sort of goes through and highlights a lot of the things and a few changes that have happened over the actual sort of time, as it were, as it were. The other interesting thing to note as well, from for a geographical perspective, for those who might be interested, is the fact that it actually the airport actually sits across two states. The state line actually sort of transitions through sort of like the middle of the main runway, through the middle of 1432. So, which is really interesting and unusual. So it is, I believe, nominally in the jurisdiction of Queensland. So that is its nominal jurisdiction. But yeah, it's interesting that it actually straddles like two states, is what it is. So the state line passes through. So there you go. This is a random piece of geographic fact for everybody. Anyway, so moving on. So with the Gold Coast Airport. So as I said, this rendition of the airport is how it appears at the sort of end of 2017. Now that's following a major redevelopment that happened in sort of like the early 2000s, which completed in 2010 with the launch of this new terminal building. Now there was a marked rise of air movements in and around from Gold Coast Airport, sort of in the wake of the low-cost carrier sort of becoming a commonplace example of air operations throughout the world, and indeed in Australia was no exception. With the rise of Jetstar and AirAsia X and Tiger, the air operations movements increased dramatically from Gold Coast Airport because its proximity to a very important recreational destination and a very important holiday destination for not only domestic but also international visitors. So it became a hub for Jetstar, which is Qantas's low-cost carrier, as well as a hub for Virgin and also for AirAsia X and for Tiger as well. So predominantly you see a lot of the budget carriers here. You do see some of the more established. Qantas itself does operate limited flights here, though primarily they're Qantas Link flights rather than Qantas mainline flights, and you will see a few of the other carriers kicking around as well. So yeah, it's definitely been fueled by the low-cost carrier development. Now, one of the things to note about the airport, as we for the domain terminals, we've probably been circling around here, that you would have noted, is the fact that there are no jetways. So to board aircraft here at Gold Coast, it is the old-fashioned way where you sort of go, you go airside, you sort of want to you go across the tarmac, yes, go across the tarmac and into the aircraft. So it's one of the things that I really like to see in scenery, and Orbx is generally very, very good for this. Is I love to see these sort of like, you know, I love to see these little scenes that happen to actually, it actually really brings an airport and this piece of scenery to life. We actually have people here waiting to board their Qantas 737 flight to probably to Melbourne or Sydney. Then we also have got our other aircraft waiting on the stand. Now, the other thing that I find really cool about this scenery, that I think is pretty damn amazing, and I don't think I've seen anywhere else, is, oh, there it is, yes, it's in several places on this scenery. So Orbx have been known for sort of doing a few things that are sort of very unusual and fairly sort of, you know, innovative in the flight sim scenery world. This is no exception. So we've had the guys sort of, you know, moving bags between things before, but now we actually have, not only do we have a guy moving bags, we have a guy moving bags and loading them into a static airplane. Like, that is so cool and so innovative. Like, I don't know of any other scenery developer that does this, and it's a small thing, and it doesn't cost you any frames, but I'll tell you what, it really adds something significant to the actual sort of, you know, immersion at the airport and what you actually see. So I think it's amazingly cool. Like, I think that's just awesome, and he's handling it like I've seen many baggage handlers handle bags, which is sort of just like hurling it, throwing in the general direction of the conveyor belt. But yes, that's that's just cool. I have no idea how they do it, and I think it's just an awesome sort of thing to actually sort of show off. So I really want to show off some of the innovation that comes from here. We've also got sort of, you know, some static light effects on some of the airport vehicles as well, but it's just really cool to see like some of these things that sort of give you life to the airport as well. We've got another sort of scene here along up here as well, and all the visual, you know, detritus that you see around an airport as well. So I really wanted to show off those couple of things here. We've got two baggage handlers doing that here, as long as connected to the ground power unit there. So it's these kind of attention to detail moments for me that really set a good quality scenery apart from sort of just your average scenery, and it's really impressive to see what Orbx have done here at Gold Coast, as well as just the simple fact that they're just these amazingly detailed quality of the buildings as well. So there's a combination of both photoreal and sort of photoreal based sort of renditions of the airport and the airport facilities here. Now we've got the ramp, GA ramp, sort of over here as well on the side here. That's a new addition that was added in late into 2017, I believe. And we've got the construction, some bit of a construction site happening over here to the next phase of the airport as well. And again, I keep coming to these like attention to detail things as well. Is that they've actually sort of got the actual sort of signs that are like can be seen, you know, at the airport as well. So actually sort of all the little advertisements and sort of showing off things in the region is it's just amazing actually sort of seeing that kind of level of detail. And I know we've sort of been a bit spoiled from Orbx because we kind of expect it from Orbx now, but it's always great to actually sort of go around and look at these things as well. And it's something that sometimes I think it can be underestimated when we sort of fly in on our sort of tube liners or bigger aircraft or whatever. We sort of forget that, you know, there's a lot of passion that goes into development by developers as well, and it's great to be able to sort of, you know, go into like, you know, the avatar mode in Prepared or Orbx's Bob for FSX, or just like, you know, the chase plane free camera, which is what I'm using here today, and actually sort of explore and see this labor of love and like these amazingly fine details here that have actually gone in, that have actually come from the developers. Like we've got the Skybus here. Skybus is only sort of running from the Gold Coast Airport fairly recently, more of a common thing in Melbourne here as well, and I have no idea what just happened there. So yeah, I think this, okay, that's happened a couple of times since the last chase plane update. Not really sure what's going on there. Anyway, random. Moving on. But yeah, so it's just great seeing all these like details of actual sort of, you know, all the vehicles sort of parked around here, and the things that we actually get to see and the signs. So it's really amazing seeing that actual sort of amount of detail that's gone into it here. We've got sort of like the car parks are done with all the vehicles. We've got all the walkways as well. Ways they're a bit odd with their details, but you know, Still though, the fact that they're all detailed and we've got all this amazing work here is just really, really cool, and just great to actually see the level of detail that's come through here as well. So it's just, I love it. I really, I literally just, I'm struggling to fault this here. I really am. Like, I think it's really easy on the frames. I've got no frame impact despite all this sort of detritus and clutter that goes on here. And we've got our freight sort of setup, freight side of things set up here. We've got business jets central over here. So yeah, so as well as obviously supporting your sort of regional passenger service movements as well, it also has a strong bizjet sort of arrivals and set up as well as being a small sort of regional carrier Sea Air as well as being a destination for the RFDS. The RFDS since the opening of the Gold Coast University Hospital has been it can use this airfield as a place to actually bring trauma patients as well. So it's a and it's great to actually see that. I don't know if you missed that, but you're actually again seeing the RFDS aircraft sort of represented here. So it's great that that's sort of modeled here as well. So yeah, again, I just really like the fact that we've got here, we've got Sea Air's hangar there. They do Lady Elliot Island passenger services, as well as some other GA hangars down the end as well. So a lot of detail, a lot of sort of custom static aircraft have been put on the airfield as well, suitable for it, as well as I said, full compatibility with the FTX's AI traffic and AI traffic packages in general. This is another one of those scenes. I almost forgot about this. This is another one of those scenes that I really like. And we got a sort of like a beat up old aeroplane here being worked on by the owner, having a sip of water. Like I love this detail. Like this detail is just, you don't get to see it from 30,000 feet. And this is, as I said, you don't get to see this kind of detail from 30,000 feet, but, it's really important that, you just appreciate the scenery you have. I love these little details. The fuel farm there. Also got the modeling of the other fuel services on the other side of the airport as well. And again, so it's not just, the terminal building is modeled, it is the whole airport that's actually modeled. The approach systems and everything else are done as well, so it's really great to have. Interestingly enough, speaking of the approach system, so cool story. Gold Coast Airport, International Airport, it's sort of always been visual approach or RNAV approaches. It hasn't had an ILS system before. Now, one was finally approved in one was sort of was scheduled to be put into in 2015, but there was delays and there was concerns from residents and pushback and whatever about noise pollution or whatever. Eventually, it was finally okayed in 2016 for installation in 2017. So it'd be in operation in time for the recent Commonwealth Games here on the Gold Coast. Unfortunately, though, due to some issues during construction, that actually didn't happen. So what's interesting about this scenery is that this scenery actually does feature the ILS. So the ILS is modeled here for you to use, but the approach plates still don't have market as operational. It still hasn't actually been built yet. So maybe the guys are a little ahead of the curve here, but yeah, so there is an ILS featured here, but it is not actually operational from what I can tell. As I said, it was supposed to be operational in late 2017, hasn't come online as yet. Is scheduled hopefully for construction for completion later in 2018, early 2019. So it's just interesting. The guys are a little bit of they're predicting the future here at the moment. Also got custom models as well dot throughout the airport, including this beautiful rendition of the airport fire service. As I said, as I said before, I'll be honest, I love this airport. As I said, it's a local airport for me. It's really, really good. I think they've modeled it incredibly detailed, an incredible amount of detail, but still very easy on frames. A lot of hard work's going into this one, and it just looks amazing. Now, of course, we've been having a look at it in the daytime, so we'll now have a look at we'll have a look at the night time in just a second. The other thing that's interesting as well is that, as I said, we're looking at this in Prepared V4, and we're seeing that, and we just pan across the taxi with the apron here. We can see that beautiful use of all the sort of the high HDR sort of lighting and the texturing, and the way they've actually done that is really, really impressive. What they've done here, taking full advantage of all the little tips and tricks and bugs and not bugs, but all the tips, tricks, and all the fun stuff and all the fun eye candy that you get in Prepared V4. So really, really well done here, guys. There you go. All right. So the other thing, of course, is that there is night lighting. So let's have a look at it in the night time. So we'll switch this over to a night scene now. We'll see what it looks like. So at night, it takes full advantage of the dynamic lighting along the apron as well, and still looks really, really impressive. The only thing though, as you probably guessed, is that dynamic lighting does mean that you do get a bit of a frame rate hit. Not as much as I was expecting, but you do still have a bit of a frame rate hit. Once you sort of move away from sort of like the ramp area, and you sort of move onto sort of like the rest of the sort of darkened area, you sort of find that, yeah, the frames sort of free up. But other than that, yeah, as I said, it still looks really impressive. All the actual sort of runway lighting is actually sort of modeled correctly, and beautiful sets of illuminated taxiway signs as well. As well, oh, that's a bit quick. Full illuminated taxi signs as we come to expect, as well as beautiful sets of the airport runway and taxiway lighting as well. So full renditions of everything. Everything looks good and looks clean. Just no real issues. Just as I said, a bit of a frame rate hit sort of when you go to the main sort of terminal ramp area. You can sort of see those sort of loading some of the textures. Took a bit more time to load. So yeah, nothing too major, nothing too sort of, hard on everything. But yeah, you will notice a little bit of a hit as you come along here, but again, nothing too major. So there you go. So, all right, well, I just love the detail that's gone into this one. Like, the detail is just great. It really is. Oh, seriously, Chase Plane, what are you doing to me today? What are you doing? No idea. Anyway. Alright, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to switch back to the daytime, and then we're going to go for an exploration up the coast there and have a look through of all of the CityScene Gold Coast, and have a quick look at and a quick little circuit around here. And we're also going to check out the second field, because the other thing that goes with Orbix's Gold Coast as well is you also get a second field included as well. And we're going to talk a bit more about that as we fly up towards it, and also if a little quirk if you do own the CityScene Gold Coast as well. Alright, so we're back in daylight, and as I said, we're going to go show off some of my absolutely awful helicopter skills. Now, for those who are asking, as I said, you do get a bit of parking. You get various of the gates here at the actual main terminal free for you to spawn in on. You also have available to you the GA parking down the south here. And you also have some of the parking available for you in the GA in the northern area. There are also 2 helipads that are modelled and included here. We've got one here, the northern one, which we'll be taking off from today, and there is also a southern one just here as well, closer to the terminal. So yeah, so there is something for everybody here, especially for low and slow flyers and helicopter pilots. You'll appreciate the Gold Coast scenery that we're going to be about to go and have a look at. Alright, so as I said, with this, that's sort of like the main part of the Gold Coast Airport review done. I'll give my final thoughts on it as we, once we sort of finish the rest of the tour at the end of the video. But for now, we're going to jump into this AW139, and we're going to have a look around, and we're going to go and do a bit of a flight around the region, and we're going to and show off my absolutely awful helicopter skills. Shall we do that? We shall do that. Alrighty, so here we are in our AW139 ready for takeoff. We're going to be departing here from the northern one of the 2 heliports here at Helipads here at Gold Coast. As I said before, we're going to head south for a little bit. We're going to then sort of turn around to the limits of the Gold Coast cityscape. Then we're going to head north, and we're going to have a look at some of the cool sort of features along the way, and spot a couple of things that made it in, and point out a couple of things that I think got missed. Because being a local, I'm possibly going to be a little bit more critical of this than I could be, because I actually know the area and I know some of the cool things about it. Spoiler alert ahead, helicopter pilots, you kind of got a little ripped off here. Then we're going to sort of finish it out. We're going to head up, as I said, we're going to head north. We're going to have a look at that second airport that comes with the Gold Coast Airport, the Southport Strip, the Southport Aero Club. Gonna have a look at that, and then we might finish off by flying one of the helipads there, so let's see. Alright, without any further ado, oh, that's the other thing I should say, apologies in advance for all helicopter fans for my absolutely awful helicopter piloting skills, so apologies in advance for that. Alright, okay, without any further ado, let's depart. Head over here of the airport here. So again, looking. Oh, actually, that's the other thing I want to know. So, so beside the Gold Coast Airport, runs the main highway of Australia, the M1. Pacific Motorway, it's called for this section here, and there's a little bit of a monument thing that sort of marks sort of like just before the boundary, sort of as you're entering Queensland. And yes, they have modelled it. It is an absolute monstrosity. The tree height's a bit lower than I remember, but yes, there it is. I have no idea what that piece of artwork is supposed to represent, but they have modelled it. That's cool. Okay, nice. I'm happy with that. Anyway, okay, moving on. All right, we'll shoot across the strip here, having another look at some of the parts of the airport as we fly over. So the cityscape, so the airport itself sort of is pretty much limited to the actual airport surrounds. There's not much sort of that really extends beyond the perimeter of the actual airport. I think the only part that is actually sort of is included as part of the airport scenery and not part of the Gold Coast cityscape. There's a couple of bits of here just on the edge of the car park. There's a sort of set of shops here. Let's see if I can slow down a little bit here. Yeah, so we've got a couple of there's some shops there that have been sort of custom modelled here, including the Volcom store. The Volcom's a sort of a surf clothing brand here, so they've got their logo on display at the front there. So that's been custom models. So we've got those things, but that's sort of like that's pretty much the perimeter of the sort of the airport scenery. But yeah, so there you go. I want to sort of show off the airport surrounds. We've got the car parks, of course, the airport there. A couple other buildings. So yes, so once we sort of reach the edge of that, that's where we come in now into the Gold Coast Cityscape Scenery. So the Gold Coast Cityscape Scenery, so as I said, we've pretty much, as I said, as I was saying earlier, the actual border between the two states dissects the runway. So we've now crossed over into New South Wales. Now the whole sort of cityscape scenery for the Gold Coast is a mixture of custom sort of autogen, so actually sort of actual custom points of interest for actual buildings. So the skyscrapers that we're seeing along here, along the foreshore, which is very much an iconic part of the Gold Coast skyline. These are all custom modelled. The rest of the buildings here are sort of approximate models, and it's been overlaid with a set of photoreal of the actual area circa about 2016. Go through here, go around the point here. So it's interesting sort of seeing it, as I said, sort of knowing that, you know, this is sort of areas that I actually sort of know and I actually sort of spend some time around. So it's actually great seeing it. It is recognisable for the area. The purple roof building over there. We've sort of got the entrance way for there's a bit of a mini harbour there as well. Custom modelling of the dock down there as well. Pretty good. So it extends down a little bit down the Tweed coast here. So a little bit further south from here, so we've got a sort of boats sort of set up here, right down the edge here. You can kind of actually see where it sort of blends into the rest of FTX Australia, actually, by sort of seeing where the tree line sort of finishes just a bit further south from here. You can sort of see where the custom place sort of tree and photoreal sort of finishes off and goes off into the more slightly browner parts of FTX Australia, and it's sort of where the blending sort of happens between the two. By the way, so you don't have to have Cityscape Gold Coast to get the Gold Coast Airport scenery. It is advisable because it does sort of blend a bit better here. There we go, complete with birds flying around the actual lighthouse there. That's cool. But you are required to have FTX Australia to actually be able to use the Gold Coast Airport. Well, which is interesting, and so it says you've got to have FTX Australia. The Gold Coast Cityscape says that you have to have FTX Australia as well. So pretty much, if you've got one, you're probably going to have the other as well. So yes, this is sort of like the southern limits of the actual sort of Gold Coast Cityscape scenery here. We've got some of the buildings over here. So as I said, like a lot of the custom buildings are sort of more the high-rise ones. We're going to go inland a little bit to sort of have a look at some of the others as well as we go up the coast. And some of the stadiums have all been custom modelled. Other ones like this sort of set of warehouses down here. Now, although they're not custom, from what I can tell, they're not custom modelled. They are laid out fairly accurately though for the area. So you could get a bit of mix and match. For the sort of bit of generic but a bit of custom modelling as well, because that area does have a lot of industrial buildings and they look about right size. And as I said, they look like they're sort of designed and custom being fitted to the actual photoreal scenery that's used as the underlying sort of sections as well. It's pretty detailed as well. There's a lot of canal estates and stuff here as well for the area, though that's a bit odd. It looks like we forgot a bridge though down there, perhaps. I think we forgot a bridge. That looks a bit, that doesn't look quite right, does it? It's a fairly famous bridge, sort of, the first bridge in New South Wales. No, that one doesn't look right. That one over there looks a bit better, but that other one doesn't look right. Interestingly enough, sorry, just as we're flying past the airport again, the Gold Coast Airport, well, the Coolangatta Airport, is also the site of Queensland, the state of Queensland's worst air disaster as well. So back in 1949, there was operated by Queensland Airways. There was a Lockheed Lodestar. It was the only one ever used in non-military service in Australia. Was being used as a regular passenger transport, sort of up and down the east coast. And it departed on a flight from Gold Coast heading up to Airfield Airport just outside of Brisbane, and it stalled after takeoff and crashed the ground, killing all 21 occupants on board. And to this day, it remains as the worst aviation disaster in Queensland history. So very sad, morbid part of Queensland aviation history can also be found here at the Gold Coast Airport. So we're heading north now. We've sort of got the Pacific Motorway there on our right as we're heading up. And so it's again very interesting for me being able to sort of pick out sort of landmarks and stuff like that. And we've got the custom buildings there on the approach there. Now, as we get more into the sort of suburbs that we're flying over now, so these suburb buildings are more just sort of generic buildings, maybe not exact ones, but they're popped out and hand placed and set up to actually sort of match the photo reel underneath, which can mean that it can get very, very dense as well. It's not too bad at the moment, but as we get closer to sort of the more built-up areas of the Gold Coast, as we're heading a bit further north from here, I do find that it does impact the frame rates a little bit. Definitely more so than the airports do, but just because it's just drawing so many buildings. In fact, there was a bit of a stutter right then. So yeah, that can be a challenge as well as as you get in through one of the things of the cityscape, is that it does look really, really good, but unfortunately you do get the feeling of those stutters and that sort of it does start to take a bit of a toll on your system. And sometimes even with my system, for example, there's something on final there. It can be a challenge to actually sort of get everything to actually sort of load in, and some of the textures underneath can take a bit longer to load and stuff like that as well. So you do have to sort of weigh up a bit of a performance hit that you will take as you come over some of the more heavily filled areas as we are at the moment. So it's possibly worth having the refresh scenery button. Even Prepare Victoria, it sort of still takes a bit of a hammering as well. Just flying along here, we can see one of the mines that's sort of down there on the southern Gold Coast, mining sand. A very big export, funnily enough, from that area. Continuing our journey north. Now, of course, one of the things that are always considerable eye points for areas and sort of folks for areas is always stadiums. And of course, so the Gold Coast stadiums have been modelled here as well, and we're going to go up here near one of them now. So we can see here that this stadium has been modelled in beautiful detail, like really well done, like amazing detail here. But right next door to this stadium is the Westpac helicopter life-saving helicopters base, and also the home of one of the police helicopters that serve Southeast Queensland. In that building, right there, and it's not modelled. Like, there's a building there, but the helipad is not, and that's like, what the hell? Like that's like really disappointing. Like it's a really simple way to sort of add a lot more of life, especially sort of aviation related life to the scenery, and it's just not, and that's really sad and really disappointing. Like as I said, like you've got this beautiful detailed model here of the stadium, when right next door a fairly important aviation sort of thing going on there, and it's just not modelled at all. A real shame. So again, continuing our headway north, we'll head. We might scoot back to the coastline actually at the moment. A lot of these canal waterway living areas have been modelled, and they're very hard to sort of model in default sort of ESP platform scenery. So that's where you do need sort of custom photoreal and custom sort of altered scenery like we have here with Orbx. It works very, very well, and they've modelled these sort of the golf courses, and again that sort of that blending of the photoreal with sort of actual sort of with custom placed autogen as well is really important and gives a really, really spectacular result. It really, really does. So we're heading up here as well to some of the other iconic buildings and iconic parts of the Gold Coast. So one of the interesting stuff, so gambling is a very a rare thing. Is a fairly it's common but rare in Australia, especially sort of like your pokie machines. You'll find them sort of pretty much everywhere, but actual sort of gambling casinos are fairly rare in Australia. In fact, I believe in Queensland there's only 3, and this was the first one that was actually sort of together here. This is the Jupiter's Casino. So it's a very iconic building in the Gold Coast skyline here. We're just really flying around it here. Now what's interesting as well is that it used to actually be a monorail that actually used to go sort of inside, go through Jupiter's Casino and across into one of the other buildings, sort of just across the main Gold Coast highway there. Sadly the monorail is gone now. It's no longer there, but it used to sort of terminate and goes to something to the shopping complex over there on the side, which used to be kind of cool, kind of awesome. We've also got the Gold Coast Convention Centre model there, home of Supernova and Comic Con in Queensland on the Gold Coast, which is always cool as well. And on the other side of Jupiter's Casinos, a lot of things happen down this part of the Gold Coast. And of course we've got the monstrosity of the I believe it is the largest shopping mall. I know it's the largest shopping mall in Queensland, and if it's not the largest one in Australia, it must be pretty damn close to it, with Pacific Fair there. It's just absolutely a monstrosity, that thing. That is huge. It's ginormous. And again, sort of a beautiful set of customizing, putting custom models in there to actually sort of match everything. A lot of detail has gone into that as well, and matching a lot of the content. And so again, blending of sort of actual sort of photographs of the actual buildings put together. So as I said, when it comes to the custom points of interest, there is a lot of detail and a lot of work that's gone in from the Orbx team to really bring it sort of to life, as it were, and make it actually look pretty. Something that is unfortunate, or maybe fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it. No buildings on the Gold Coast, other than the University Hospital, actually have helipads on them. So there is no sort of buildings to land on, as it were, and I don't believe that any of these skyscrapers are landable, as it were, because they don't have actual helipads on them. This building that we're coming up to now is known as Q1. Now this is the largest building in Australia, and the 6th tallest residential tower in Australia. In the world. So it's the largest one in Australia, but the 6th tallest in the world, and it's because of that spire on the sort of top there. That actually gives it its height advantage. If you're just counting the floors and the observation decks and stuff like that, there's a couple that are taller than it. But if you actually count all the way up to the tip of the spire up there, it does make it to the 6th largest in the world and the largest in Australia. There is actually, for those who might be fitness nuts around who might be watching it, there is a really interesting challenge there that happens every year for fundraiser for various charity causes. Is there is actually a race to actually run up the stairs from the bottom to the top. This thing is 1,058 feet to the top of the building. I think it's about 1,000 feet, just shy of 1,000 feet to actually go up, just inside the building where you can run up. So yeah, if you ever feel like doing an insane sort of fitness challenge, you can do that. Yes, absolutely crazy. Though actually having a look at the photo reel, I realise it is slightly off on its photo reel. Slightly off. Not quite. Not by much, but it is off a little bit by the photo reel. There you go. That's the other danger of using photo reel underlays for stuff like this. You notice stuff like that. Anyway. But yes, as I said, sadly, no buildings sort of to land on for helicopter pilots. Sorry, guys. Because, yeah, just no buildings in Australia really... And yeah, very few buildings in Australia actually sort of have helipads on them. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Anyway. Alright, so again, we're going to continue on our way north and have a look at some other interesting things as well. And again, we're going to come up with one of the things that I noticed, which is a couple of interesting things. So I was saying before that we missed the Westpac helicopter, the helipad, the Westpac Rescue Service helipad service has not been modelled here. Which I think is a bit of a shame. But what has been done though is that there is a helipad marina in the sort of Surfers Paradise Marina. Now that has been modelled. Now, but what's interesting is that there's another helipad right next to it, which is not, and that's very weird, very odd. So this is heading. We're heading up to sort of what we call the Southport Spit. Now, one of the things that the Gold Coast has for offer, as I said, it's a very, 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 very touristy town. A lot of tourism sort of happens here as well. I'm just going to gear down. Oops, I don't believe it. As I said, I apologise at the start of this section of the video by saying apologies to all those helicopter aficionados here, because I'm sure you're going to be all cringing for the way I'm behaving while holding these helicopters. But anyway, so there are a couple of sort of helipads that are included and are modelled fairly well in here, and this is one of them. So this is the Southport Marina helipad. So it's a 3 helicopter sort of pontoon that's used for sort of sightseeing flights around the area. And I'm going to see if I can not land in the water and see if I can make an absolute pig's breakfast of this. So this helipad is modelled. Now it's not sort of, and it's again I got mixed feelings about it. It's got the sort of like the default sort of FSX sort of helipad spaces, but at least it's actually sort of provided to you for you can actually land. Like the surrounding buildings are sort of a model of what they are with the pontoon. So at least we got that one as well. So make a pig's breakfast of this when I land. Ooh, crunch. Oh, I think I possibly did some damage to the tyres there, but anyway. Yes, I did land all good, successfully, not quite very close to the H, but anyway. So yeah, it's done. So it is modelled and it does operate, as I said, flights for the region to actually sort of go into tourism flights. So you can go out and explore, various overflights and do pretty much what we're doing here in the sim. So they're important, and it is modelled. But as I said, but there is another helipad just a little bit north of here that is not modelled, along with possibly one of the most iconic attractions of the Gold Coast. So let's jump back in the cockpit and we'll head north and we'll find out where that is and what happened to it. Alright. So I was saying, one of the things in this area is the fact that it is, as I said, it's very much a tourist area, very tourist mecca of the Gold Coast. And one of the things the Gold Coast is famous for is it has a lot of theme parks. And one of the longest running and most iconic one is SeaWorld. So yes, Australia does have its own SeaWorld. America, you don't have a license to just have a SeaWorld to yourselves. Anyway, so SeaWorld is sort of through here. Now, what's interesting is that the photo reel does have the SeaWorld, including the massive car park there and sort of a lot of the buildings in the open areas, but none of the buildings are actually custom model. They're sort of just put in generic sort of Australian themed buildings have been put in, and nothing specific for the area. They have put the monorail track in, which is good, but it's just interesting that none of the iconic SeaWorld buildings are actually there and modelled. And there's also Plaza Versace on the side there as well, and it's just weird and interesting. The other thing as well is that there is also a helipad that SeaWorld uses for sort of its own sort of tourism experience, Gold Coast experience flights. Now what's interesting is the fact that you can actually see that that's the helipad there. Funny enough, the photo reel actually captures a helicopter actually sort of on final approach to it. So it's just interesting that you know, the helipad's there, but it's not modelled with an actual helipad, and the photo reel sort of has SeaWorld, but none of the custom buildings for SeaWorld have been put in. They've just been put generic stuff in. So I don't know why that is. I'm going to venture a guess and say it's probably something to do with some form of licensing restrictions. But it's just it does detract a little bit from it. Just saying it, it really does, which is a bit of a shame, really. Yeah, I don't know why they couldn't include it. As I said, I'm assuming it's some form of copyright or licensing issue, but anyway. So yes, the photo reel captures it that they're using, and the custom buildings and like the resort custom buildings are kind of there, but yeah, just interesting, weird. Anyway, so yes, heading out here. So the Spit also has a safe anchorage for a lot of very expensive yachts and harbours and whatever. So there you go. All right, so it sort of continues on to the mouth of the Spit of the entrance to the safe harbour here. And then it goes up to, because this is also then onto the southern tip of South Stradbroke Island, as well. This is one of the sand islands off the coast of Queensland. And that's pretty much the main parts of this one as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn inland. It does sort of continue a bit further to Hope Island Resort, and a few other sort of iconic, as I said, a lot of the skyscrapers on here, they're all sort of iconically done, and all the marinas are featured and put in their right places with custom boats. But otherwise, the rest of the Autogen is custom for sort of Australian areas, and gives you a chance to actually sort of explore the area. And for me, as someone who actually sort of knows the area, looks at the area, it does overall definitely fit in with the overall area, which is pretty good. So as we continue on here, this is the second airport I was telling you guys about that actually you get as part of the Orbix, the Gold Coast airport. So as I said, you actually get two. Now what's interesting here is that you actually get it twice. Now I'm going to do a bit of a horrible turn here so we get a bit of a better view of it a bit closer down, and we might even come in for a bit of a landing here in a second. A horrible approach to show this off. Alright, so this is Southport Airfield. Now this is a general aviation strip, so just a very, it's not quite a private strip, but this is a GA strip, not sort of any commercial operations or anything. There's a lot of light aircraft here. There's a flight school here. There's a very simple, very small strip here. So still paved concrete runway, but again very nice and easy. Now what's interesting is that you actually get a light version of this included with the Gold Coast, the actual sort of city of Gold Coast scenery. Now the detailed version that we're seeing here, including this little scene with the smoke rising there, now that comes as courtesy as part of the Gold Coast airport scenery. Now what's interesting is because these two would essentially clash, is that what you have to do is that you have to go into the actual sort of scenery of the. Now I have to put my. What you have to do is you have to go into the config file for the scenery of the Gold Coast Airport, and actually check that you have the Gold Coast that you have the Gold Coast Cityscape. Now, by checking that fact that you have the Gold Coast Cityscape, what that will do is that will actually turn off the light version that you get included with the Gold Coast Cityscape, and leave the the high definition, the high detail one that you get here, that we're seeing here. It's turned on. If you don't, you get some weird things happening with buildings and stuff like that, sort of blending and merging together, and just generally not looking quite right. All right, let's set this. See if we can set this down quietly and gently. There we go. Alright. on. Okay. Alright, so let's have a wander through here. We'll have a look at some of the cool features again, because this is, you get a whole second airport. And again, I'd just like to go through and have a look at the attention to detail that we get with this. So not only do you get sort of some custom sort of static aircraft here, because this airfield, as I said, it's a general aviation airfield primarily, does a bit of flight training, but it also is home to some parachute things, because a lot of people like jumping out of perfectly serviceable aeroplanes over pretty places, like the Gold Coast and the beaches and stuff like that. So skydivers will often be found here going off or whatever. But my favourite part of this is the detail that's gone through here with this little, again, this little like scenery here. So we've sort of got a bit of a barbecue happening here, a very Australian pastime. And no, we don't call them shrimp, by the way. We don't. The shrimp on the barbie is very much an American thing. We call them prawns, but I don't think there's any shrimp in sight on this barbie. But yeah, so it's just kind of cool. I really like this sort of, you know, the fact we've got the detail of the buildings there. And these little scenes going on. It's just really, really cool. I just love seeing this kind of stuff. I really, really do. The other thing, again, a lot of details gone on this on a simple airport. As I said, it's just a small airfield. With the Southport Airport, it's complete with this, like the actual sort of, you know, the detail of the props sort of being here at by the name on the gate. Like, it's just so much detail goes into this airport. And this is, as I said, this is the secondary airfield that you get as part here on the Southport Flying Club. So yeah, I just really wanted to show that off. I really wanted to show that off. Unfortunately, one side effect though, for whatever reason, and I don't really understand why they've done this one. You can't actually, although the ICAO appears in the start list of sort of position you can choose, you can't actually choose any. There's no parking or start spots here. So I think that's a bit weird and a bit odd, but it seems that you can't actually start here, which is just, yeah, I don't get it. It looks like it does have AI traffic though for here. I have seen one AI aircraft when I was researching this. Alright, let's get back on board and we'll go for something else. Alright, so the last thing that I want to try and show off to you guys today is, I know I've been sort of saying that there's a lot of sort of helicopter pilots sort of going to get a little bit sort of screwed for this one, but there is something for you, I promise there really is. It's the Gold Coast University Hospital. So we're going to take off from here, we're going to head out, we're going to have a look at that one, because the University Hospital, it's a fairly new hospital, only a few years old here on the Gold Coast, and sort of the first major. It's definitely a huge upgrade from the previous medical centre that was here on the Gold Coast. And so as I said, a major centre now for a lot of medical care in the wider region as well. And the RFDS often do a lot of ops out of here now as well. But it does also have a helipad on the roof, and that has all been modelled for us. We're going to go have a look at that. We're going to land on that, and we'll go through our final thoughts today. Alright, so as we're approaching the Gold Coast University Hospital here, so the University Hospital is a fairly new concept in the state of Queensland, a fairly new concept in Australia really. The attached university is Griffith University, for those who might be interested, and it was the first of two. There is a second one now, the Sunshine Coast University Hospital as well. Now it has been modelled reasonably low detail, so the surrounding buildings are a bit rough as well, but it has been modelled with a helipad on the roof. Fairly generic though, it's a sort of a fairly generic sort of hospital layout with the fairly generic sort of ESP hospital helipad there, and I'm going to try and attempt landing on here, not making a complete pig's breakfast of this. As I come in here, hopefully we'll at least do one helicopter landing relatively painlessly today. And then, well, for that, we'll touch on some summaries, some thoughts, and we'll round out the review today. See if I can not make a complete pig's breakfast of this, hopefully, maybe. I can feel all the helipad, all the helicopter pilots watching this and cringing. Right. Ah, haha, down. Excellent. Okay, cool, awesome. I'm gonna put the park brake on before I fly away. All right, done. Okay, all right. Let's go out for some final thoughts. Okay, so final thoughts about the two products. Let's start with the Gold Coast Airport and then and go through the Gold Coast Cityscape. So, Gold Coast Airport. Gold Coast Airport is another really great example of an amazingly detailed airport from Orbx. It is incredibly detailed. It's an airport that has an interesting history. It's exponential growth, and it really shows an incredible amount of detail that's gone into the work there. It's a project that I've known the guys have been working on for quite a while. And it's really great. It was really great to actually see it finally come to fruition. And I tell you what, they have absolutely delivered an amazing quality airport. There is a lot of attention to detail there. It's a really great alternative destination for whether you're a tube liner flyer or a GA pilot. It's a great little airport to fly into in a really beautiful part of the world. I'm a little bit biased, I will admit that. But beyond that, it is, as I said, it is a great airport, very highly detailed, and a lot going on with it, and a great representation. And a lot of testing and a lot of innovative sort of stuff's been put in there from the guys over at Orbx as well. So definitely I can recommend that one. I think it's a great quality add-on to be added into, especially for anybody who enjoys flying in the Great Southern Land. You will definitely want to be adding this one to your collection. Now, in terms of the Gold Coast Cityscapes, the Gold Coast Cityscape I really have mixed feelings about. So Cityscapes for me, they're an interesting concept, and a concept that's very much pioneered by Orbx, but there are several developers do them. Actually, I don't know whether Orbx really pioneered them or not, but they sort of led the way with Portland and with Canberra, and now with Gold Coast. I can see they've tried a lot of new technologies here. There's a sort of new few examples. A little bit of I think this is possibly going to be very much a test bed for possibly what we're going to see in Australia V2 when it eventually gets updated and released at some point in the future. I think we've possibly seen a few of the technologies and a few things being in practice there as well. What do you get a reasonable amount for your money though. You get you get quite an extensive area. The major parts of the city of Gold Coast. You get some fairly detailed renditions, and the roads, and if all the vector data is correct, you get a lot of landmarks and iconic places that locals like myself will be able to recognise and be able to navigate through. So it's great to see that one. Unfortunately though, I feel that it actually still comes across as a little bit possibly not quite as good as it could have been. Because at the end of the day, something like a Cityscape is made for people who fly helicopters and fly GA and fly low and slow. Cityscapes aren't really going to be for people who spend their entire times at 30,000 feet. It's not going to be for you guys. It's just not. It's for people who spend time low and slow and want to explore something down close to the ground. And for that, it's perfect. It is a resource heavy, but you get a lot of bang for your buck. You get a lot of, there's a lot of autogen going on to cover off a very populated, dense area of southeast Queensland. So you're definitely getting a lot of bang for your buck. But at the same time, you're missing a lot of the things that make it important for helicopter pilots. You're missing the iconic parts of the Gold Coast, like the only theme park that's covered there is sort of only half covered. You've got at least 2 helicopter operational areas that I know of that I can name off the top of my head from personal experience that are not modelled in any way, shape, or form, and that's a real shame. Especially the helicopter areas and stuff like that. Like, what the hell? And the only other sort of criticism of both Cityscape Gold Coast and of the Gold Coast Airport as well is the fact that the airport is included, so Southport, because whether you buy the Gold Coast Airport by itself or whether you buy Cityscape Gold Coast by itself, you will get a rendition of Southport Airport. But you can't select it. You can't choose any of the start. You can't choose it as a start location unless you use a save file. So that's a real disappointment. I think that right there is a real disappointment. So anyway, so in terms of the Cityscape, would I invest in it? Look, it's, as I said, it is still a good representation of the major points of interest. The major landmarks are covered and shown off in some great detail. It is missing a few features that hopefully maybe we'll see added down the track. That would be really nice if we saw them added. But yeah, would I get it in its current? I perhaps would think of this one, save this one for an Orbx sale. Pick this one up on sale. Would be what I say if you're a GA slow flyer. If you're a tube liner flyer, don't bother. Just straight up. Alright guys, that rounds out my review of two Orbix products today, of course, Gold Coast International Airport, and of course of the Gold Coast Cityscape. So thank you very much for joining me, and as we round out the review, I want to say once again thank you very much to the wonderful team over at Orbix for providing me with the review copy of both of these add-ons today. And as always folks, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these videos and want to see more. And of course, as always, you can catch up with me and all the things I'm up to between videos by finding me on Facebook and on Twitter. Just search NovaWing24. Alright folks, thanks very much for watching. Take care, safe skies to all, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.